The school said boys will be boys. When a bully hurt my daughter, so I showed them what happens when fathers will be fathers. I was in my home office when I heard my daughter cutting herself in her bedroom. When I walked in, she was surrounded by chunks of her blonde hair with tears streaming down her face. I knelt down and gently took the scissors from her. She looked at me with those big blue eyes and whispered, "Maybe now he'll leave me alone." Amelia wouldn't tell me much that night. She just kept saying it didn't matter anymore and went to bed with her hair all uneven and choppy. I spent the next 3 days trying to get information out of her. She barely touched her breakfast and picked at her dinners. When I called her teacher, Ms. Peterson, she actually laughed at my concern. "Oh, you mean Archie Morrison? He has the biggest crush on Amelia. It's adorable how he follows her around like a puppy. Boys that age just don't know how to express their feelings properly." Something about the way she said, "follows her around," made my stomach turn. I didn't know how to bring it up to Amelia, and luckily, I didn't have to, because as soon as she got home, she completely broke down. Turns out, Archie had been calling her Goldilocks Beach every single day, getting the whole class to chant it during recess. He'd been cornering her in empty hallways and demanding hugs. Last week, he grabbed her face and forced her to look at him, saying, "When I talk to you, you look at me. I'm only hurting you because that's what people do when they're in love." I was furious. The school kept brushing it off as puppy love, so I told Amelia to stand up for herself, to yell loudly next time he touched her so teachers would have to pay attention. Sometimes I wonder how different things would have been if I'd just kept quiet, because the next day, Amelia came home with bruises on her wrists and her shirt torn at the collar. You see, she'd yelled at Archie to leave her alone in front of everyone. The teacher had made her apologize to him for hurting his feelings and making a scene. And as if that wasn't enough, he cornered her after school with 3 of his friends to teach her a lesson. "My dad says girls play hard to get, but they really want it. You embarrassed me, so now we're even. Tomorrow I'll show you what real love feels like," he said. Amelia collapsed against me, and I rubbed her back like when she was little, whispering that she was safe now, while my hands were trembling with rage. And that night, I drove straight to Archie's house. His dad answered the door in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Your son has been bullying my daughter." "Oh, that's not what I heard," he interrupted, with a smirk plastered on his face. "Archie told me your W-word daughter has been sending mixed signals, leading him on, then publicly rejecting him. I should have hit him to a pulp, but I didn't, because when I looked behind him, I noticed his wife standing there with a bruise on her cheek." Mark immediately grabbed her waist and pulled her close. "Linda understands how relationships work. 20 years of marriage because she knows that when we get violent, it's because I love her too much to let go." That's when I knew Archie was just following in his dad's footsteps, and soon I'd make them both pay. I left their house with my hands still shaking. The drive home took forever because I kept pulling over to calm down. When I got back, Amelia was already asleep, her choppy hair spread across the pillow like broken wings. The next morning, I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures of her bruised wrists. She flinched when I touched them gently to get better angles. I documented every mark, every torn piece of clothing. Then I went through her backpack while she ate breakfast and found crumpled notes shoved deep in the front pocket. My stomach dropped as I read them. "You're mine," written over and over in messy handwriting. "Stop ignoring me or else." One had a crude drawing of a girl with X's over her eyes. I spread everything out on the kitchen table and took more photos. Amelia watched me silently, pushing cereal around her bowl. When I asked if there were any text messages, she shook her head, but wouldn't meet my eyes. Something told me there was more she wasn't sharing yet. That afternoon, the principal called, not about Archie, but about Amelia. "Mr. Thompson, I'm concerned about your daughter's behavior. She's been very disruptive lately, seeking negative attention. Have you considered counseling? Sometimes children act out when they're struggling at home." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. "My daughter has bruises on her wrists from being assaulted yesterday. Did Ms. Peterson report that?" Ms. Peterson mentioned Amelia made quite a scene, yes. She embarrassed young Archie in front of his peers. We can't have students creating hostile environments for others. The call ended with him suggesting Amelia might benefit from a fresh start in a different class, away from her friends, away from any witnesses. 2 days later, it happened. Amelia came home and went straight to her room without a word. When I knocked, she was sitting at her desk, staring at nothing. "They moved me," she said quietly, "to Mrs. Hoffman's class. None of my friends are there, but Archie's still in Ms. Peterson's class with everyone else." I sat on her bed, trying to control my anger. "Did they say why?" "The principal said it was for my own good, that I needed space from the situation." She turned to face me, and her eyes were hollow. "Dad, he wins. He always wins." The next few days were a nightmare. Amelia started eating lunch alone because Archie had recruited a group of boys to follow her. They'd surround her table, making kissing sounds and laughing when she tried to ignore them. The lunch monitors did nothing. When she tried eating in the library instead, the librarian turned her away, claiming Archie had reported she was damaging books. I installed a recording app on Amelia's phone after explaining why I needed to. She agreed immediately, desperate for any help. The first recording we captured made my blood run cold. Archie had cornered her by the water fountain. "My dad knows people on the school board. He said if you don't start being nice to me, he'll make sure your dad loses his teaching job. You want your dad to be unemployed? Then smile when you see me." Armed with this evidence, I made an appointment with the superintendent. I prepared everything meticulously relentlessly. Photos, recordings, documentation of the school's failure to protect my daughter. But when I arrived at his office, his secretary gave me a strange look. "Oh, Mr. Thompson, Dr. Hayes is expecting you." The meeting was a disaster. Dr. Hayes sat behind his desk with his hands folded, barely glancing at my evidence. "Mr. Morrison has already been here," he said calmly. "He's quite concerned about your daughter's mental state. Apparently, she's been fixating on his son, following him around, making false accusations when he doesn't reciprocate her feelings." "That's a lie," I said, pushing the photos across his desk. "Look at these bruises. Listen to these recordings." He pushed them back without looking. "Children can be very creative when they want attention, and recordings can be edited, taken out of context. Mr. Morrison showed me some concerning emails you've sent to other parents about his family. It seems you're the one doing the harassing." I hadn't sent any emails, but arguing seemed pointless when he'd clearly already chosen a side. Strange things started happening after that meeting. Every morning, at least one of my tires was low on air. The first time, I thought it was coincidence. By the fourth time, I knew better. I found small nails scattered near my driveway, positioned perfectly to catch tires. Then came the night Amelia woke me up at 2 a.m. She was standing by my bed, shaking. "Dad," he sent me pictures. She held out her phone with trembling hands. The images made my heart stop. Photos of her bedroom window taken from outside, different angles, different nights. In one, you could see her shadow moving behind the curtains. I called the police immediately. 2 officers showed up an hour later, looking bored. They took notes, glanced at the photos, and shrugged. Without proof it was the Morrison boy, there's not much we can do. Could be anyone. Maybe install security cameras. Amelia didn't sleep the rest of the night. Neither did I. The next evening, someone knocked on our door around 8 p.m. I looked through the peephole and saw Linda Morrison standing there alone. When I opened the door, the porch light illuminated a fresh black eye. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly, glancing over her shoulder. "About Mark, about what he's teaching Archie." I let her in and made tea while she sat at my kitchen table. Her hands shook as she wrapped them around the mug. "He has cameras," she said finally, "all through our house. He's been showing Archie how to track people's phones, how to follow someone without being noticed. He calls it keeping tabs on what's yours." She reached into her purse and pulled out a USB drive. I copied files from his computer, videos from our home security system. "You need to see what he's been teaching our son." I plugged it into my laptop while Linda stared at her tea. The first video showed Mark and Archie in what looked like a home office. Mark was demonstrating something on Linda, gripping her arm and pulling her close. "See how she tries to pull away at first?" he told Archie. "That's natural. Women need to be controlled. They'll thank you for it later." Linda's face in the video was blank, resigned. Archie watched with fascination as his father showed him pressure points, ways to grab someone that wouldn't leave obvious marks. "Your mother learned years ago that fighting back makes it worse. Smart women understand their place." I copied everything immediately, making multiple backups. Linda gave me more details about Mark's connections, his position on the school board, the people he had in his pocket. "He'll destroy you if you're not careful," she warned. "He's done it before to others who challenged him." After she left, I spent the night organizing everything into a comprehensive file, but I knew I needed to be strategic. Mark Morrison had already poisoned the well with the school administration. The next morning, I tried presenting my evidence to the school board. I'd barely started speaking when Mark stood up from his seat at the board table, a satisfied smirk on his face. "Mr. Thompson has been harassing my family for weeks now. His daughter has an unhealthy obsession with my son, and instead of addressing it, he's enabling her delusions. I motion that we table this discussion until Mr. Thompson seeks appropriate mental health support for his child." The motion passed unanimously. Things escalated quickly after that. Amelia came home from art class covered in paint, her favorite sweater ruined. She was shaking as she told me what happened. Archie had cornered her while she was working on a project. He'd grabbed her hair, trying to cut off a piece with scissors. "For my collection," he'd said. She'd pushed him hard, sending him stumbling into the paint supplies. The art teacher had walked in just as Archie hit the shelves. She'd seen the mess, heard Archie's cries, and immediately blamed Amelia. "Detention for a week," she'd announced, "and you'll be cleaning up this mess." During Amelia's first detention, Archie and 5 of his friends surrounded the classroom windows. They pressed their faces against the glass, making obscene gestures and mouthing threats. The detention monitor sat at his desk, deliberately looking at his phone. That night, I made the decision to pull Amelia out of school. "We'll do homeschooling," I told her, "just until we can figure this out." The relief on her face broke my heart. "Thank you," she whispered, hugging me tighter than she had in years. But Mark Morrison wasn't done. 3 days into homeschooling, a social worker showed up at our door. "We received a concerning report," she said, holding up official-looking papers, "about educational neglect and isolation. I need to assess Amelia's living situation." As she introduced herself as Sarah Chen, something about her seemed familiar. She conducted her interview professionally, but I noticed how her eyes lingered on the evidence files I'd left on the coffee table. When she asked to speak to Amelia privately, I hesitated, but agreed. They talked for an hour. When they emerged, Sarah's expression had changed completely. "Mr. Thompson, I think we need to have a different conversation about the Morrison family. I'm Linda Morrison's cousin. I've been watching Mark hurt her for 15 years. Sarah Chen sat down at our kitchen table, her professional demeanor shifting to something more personal. She pulled out her own phone and showed me photos spanning years. Linda at family gatherings with various injuries poorly hidden by makeup. I've documented everything I could, but Linda always protected him, until now. She explained that Linda had called her the previous night, desperate and ready to act. The USB drive was just the beginning. Sarah had already connected with a family lawyer named Catherine Mackenzie, who specialized in cases involving domestic violence and institutional corruption. She's handled situations where abusers use their positions to manipulate systems. She knows how to build cases that stick. The next morning, I met Catherine at her office downtown. She was younger than I expected, with sharp eyes that missed nothing as she reviewed our evidence. She spent 3 hours going through everything, asking detailed questions and taking notes. When she finally looked up, her expression was grim but determined. "Mark Morrison has done this before," she said, pulling out a thick folder. 3 other families filed complaints over the past decade. Each time they were discredited, isolated, and eventually moved away. But none of them had what you have: Linda's cooperation and Sarah's professional documentation. She outlined our strategy. We needed more evidence, particularly of Mark's direct involvement in orchestrating the harassment. She gave me specific instructions on what to document and how to protect ourselves legally while gathering proof. That afternoon, Amelia showed me something she'd been hiding. More photos on her phone, but these were different. Screenshots of a group chat where Archie was giving other boys instructions. Make sure she can't eat anywhere. Block the hallways so she has to talk to me. My dad says if enough people say she's crazy, everyone will believe it. I forwarded everything to Catherine immediately. She responded within minutes, telling us to back up everything in multiple locations. 2 days later, our doorbell camera caught something disturbing at 3 a.m. A figure matching Archie's build spray painting words on our fence. The vandalism was vile, threats mixed with crude drawings, but we had him on video, clear as day. When I went outside to document the damage, I found something else. Our garden hose had been cut, water flooding the side of our house. The outdoor electrical outlet had been tampered with, though thankfully the breaker had tripped before any fire started. I called the police again, but this time I name-dropped Catherine Mackenzie. The officers' attitudes shifted immediately. They took the vandalism seriously, documented everything thoroughly, and promised to file a complete report. Catherine called that evening with an update. Linda came to my office today. She brought 20 years of journals documenting Mark's abuse, names, dates, specific incidents. She also has recordings from their home security system that Mark doesn't know she copied. The recordings were damning. Mark instructing Archie on how to intimidate girls. Never leave marks where teachers can see them. If she tells, just say she's jealous and wants attention. Remember, son, fear is more powerful than love. Once they're afraid, they'll do anything to make it stop. But the most chilling recording was recent. Mark telling Archie exactly how to escalate with Amelia. Her father's getting too bold. Time to show them what happens when people challenge us. Start with the house. Make them feel unsafe everywhere. Catherine filed for emergency restraining orders the next morning. The hearing was scheduled for the following week, but she warned us that Mark would escalate once he was served. She was right. The day after Mark received the papers, 3 school board members showed up at our house. They stood on our porch like a delegation of intimidation, led by a man named Robert Mackenzie, who introduced himself as board president. "Mr. Thompson, we're concerned about your fitness as an educator," he began, reading from what looked like prepared notes. "Multiple reports suggest you're coaching your daughter to make false allegations. That's a serious ethical violation that could impact your teaching license." I recorded the entire interaction on my phone, visible in my shirt pocket. "Are you threatening my job because I'm protecting my daughter from assault?" Robert's face reddened. "No one's threatening anything. We're simply suggesting that this situation could be resolved quietly if you'd be reasonable. Mr. Morrison is willing to ensure your continued employment if you withdraw these baseless accusations. Get off my property," I said calmly, "and tell Mark Morrison his intimidation tactics won't work." They left, but not before Robert made one final comment. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. Mark Morrison has connections you can't imagine." That night, Linda called from Sarah's house where she was staying. Her voice was strained but determined. "Mark's getting desperate. He's been calling everyone, trying to control the narrative, but I found something else. He has a notebook where he's documented his control strategies for years. Names of people he's blackmailed, favors he's called in, pressure points he's exploited. She'd photographed every page before leaving. The notebook revealed a web of manipulation throughout our small town. School officials, local business owners, even a few police officers who owed Mark favors or feared his influence. Catherine was ecstatic when she saw the photos. "This changes everything. It's not just about your family anymore. This is a pattern of corruption and abuse." We spent the next 3 days preparing for the hearing. Catherine coached Amelia on how to testify, keeping things factual and clear. She was brave, my daughter, even though her hands shook when she practiced describing what Archie had done. Meanwhile, the harassment continued, but became sloppier. Archie was caught on school security cameras leaving threatening notes in other students' lockers, trying to recruit them against Amelia. The principal, suddenly nervous about liability, actually called to apologize for his previous dismissiveness. The morning of the hearing, we arrived to find the courtroom packed. Word had spread, and several other families were there. Parents whose children had been bullied by Archie, women who recognized Linda's story as their own. Mark entered with an expensive lawyer, his confidence intact until he saw Linda sitting with our legal team. His His face went through several expressions: surprise, rage, then careful blankness. The judge, Roberta O'Catherine, was known for her no-nonsense approach. She reviewed the evidence methodically, asking pointed questions. When Catherine presented the recordings of Mark teaching Archie intimidation tactics, the courtroom was silent, except for the sound of Mark's lawyer frantically scribbling notes. Amelia testified with remarkable composure. She described the escalating harassment, the fear she felt, the way the school had failed to protect her. When Mark's lawyer tried to suggest she was exaggerating, she simply pulled out her phone and showed the judge the photos Archie had taken of her bedroom window. "He sent these at 2:47 a.m., she said quietly, with a message saying, "Sweet dreams, Goldilocks. I haven't slept well since." Then came the moment that changed everything. Archie was called to testify. His father had coached him well, but teenage arrogance betrayed him. When asked about the harassment, he smirked. "My dad says girls need to know their place," he stated proudly. "Amelia was being difficult, so I had to show her who's in charge. That's what men do." The judge's expression hardened. "And who taught you this?" "My dad. He showed me with Mom how to make women listen. He says once they're scared enough, they'll do whatever you want." Mark lunged from his seat, grabbing Archie's arm hard enough to make him cry out, "Shut up, you idiot!" Court officers immediately restrained Mark, but the damage was done. He'd just assaulted his son in front of a judge, proving everything we'd claimed about his violent nature. Judge O'Catherine called a recess. When we returned, her ruling was swift and comprehensive. Permanent restraining orders for both Mark and Archie. No contact with Amelia or me, directly or through third parties. Archie was mandated to undergo intensive therapy with regular court monitoring, but she wasn't done. "Mr. Morrison, your behavior in my courtroom today, combined with the evidence presented, deeply concerns me. I'm referring this case to the district attorney for criminal charges, including witness intimidation, assault, and conspiracy to commit harassment." Mark's lawyer tried to object, but the judge cut him off. "I'm also forwarding all documentation to the school board with my strong recommendation that Mr. Morrison's position be reconsidered immediately." As we left the courthouse, Linda approached us. She looked exhausted, but somehow lighter. "Thank you," she said simply, "for believing the evidence, for fighting back. You've given me the courage to finally end this." Her divorce lawyer was waiting in the parking lot. With the restraining order and Mark's courtroom assault on record, she was filing for emergency custody and fast-track divorce proceedings. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Mark was arrested on multiple charges after the DA reviewed the evidence. His bail was set high due to the documented intimidation tactics. The school board, suddenly concerned about liability and public image, voted unanimously to terminate his position. Several other families came forward with their own stories about Archie's bullying and Mark's protection of his son's behavior. Catherine filed a civil suit on behalf of multiple victims, seeking damages and institutional changes. The school district, facing potential lawsuits and public scrutiny, implemented new anti-bullying policies with real teeth. Teachers received mandatory training on recognizing and addressing harassment. The principal, who had dismissed our concerns, was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Archie was transferred to a therapeutic boarding school specializing in behavioral modification. The court mandated weekly therapy sessions and regular progress reports. His therapist, Dr. Kathy Tubert, later told us that Archie's worldview had been so warped by his father's teachings that it would take years to undo the damage. Linda's divorce proceeded quickly. With the criminal charges against Mark and the documented abuse, she received full custody. Mark was allowed only supervised visits, which Archie initially refused to attend. The criminal trial was set for 6 months out, but Mark's attempts to intimidate witnesses from jail only added to the charges against him. Several of his former allies distanced themselves, suddenly remembering instances of his inappropriate behavior they'd previously ignored. Our community slowly began to heal.